Many people wonder what's in store given the extreme uncertainty in the world today. I recently attended a luncheon where the speaker was the deputy chief economist and managing partner of a major Canadian chartered bank. His presentation was called Normalizing the Abnormal. In it, he referenced a famous quote by Vladimir Lenin: "There are decades when nothing happens and weeks when decades happen." It looks as though the first 2 or 3 weeks of April may be an example of the latter. The economist pointed out that every oil shock the world has ever experienced has been followed by a recession. But he made an important distinction regarding causation. It wasn't the oil shock itself that caused recessions of the past, but rather the monetary response to those shocks. His view is that these shocks will be inflationary, and that central banks will have no choice but to raise rates in response, and that those higher rates will cause the economy to shrink. He also pointed out that there are 4 important considerations when assessing the severity of what's to follow. 1. What was the price of oil at the eve of the recession? 2. Where did the economy stand at the eve of the recession? 3. What's the magnitude of the oil price shock? And we're already at a 50% increase. 4. What's the duration of the recession? He pointed out that the price of oil was not excessive when the war started and opined that the economy was not in bad shape either. In other words, the most important consideration for investors at this juncture is how long the looming recession will last. He was quick to point out something called the efficiency paradox. As has been noted by several people, when energy prices become cheaper, society tends to use more of it. Of course, the inverse is also true. So as the price of oil increases, people will likely go to great lengths to consume less of it. He also pointed out that food is energy intensive and that the price of food is already 20% higher than it was before the war started. The economist wasn't afraid of cracking a few jokes either. He quipped that Donald Trump's policies are like Ozempic for the US economy. He noted that blue-collar jobs might be the new white-collar jobs, meaning that many low-level professional positions could be disintermediated by artificial intelligence, but that the skilled trades are likely to be secure because AI can't do things like plumbing, electrical work, or more home construction. He pointed out that while not powerless, Donald Trump is weaker than he once was because courts have been systematically ruling that his actions on tariffs are unconstitutional. One important factor that I believe many commentators miss was pointed out in the presentation. That is that both the citizens and the governments of countries like Iran and China have a much higher pain tolerance than Americans do regarding economic dislocation and discomfort. By his calculations, 93% of the costs associated with tariffs are being paid by Americans, either by corporations or by consumers. He believes the CUSMA negotiations will be relatively benign since Americans have less leverage than they had previously, and he predicts that the tariffs will be deep but narrow and likely to only affect a handful of industries like dairy and forestry. The economist also made mention of the so-called mortgage cliff. Compared to 5 years ago, mortgage rates are higher, while real estate values are lower. He estimates that only about 5% of Canadian people are up for renewal, but that those people will see their payments go up by 40% to 50%. He nonetheless believes there will not be any new wave of delinquencies because banks are likely to simply increase the term on the mortgages to maintain stability in the system. The conundrum in 2026 is that housing is too expensive to buy, but not expensive enough to build. As many people know, he underscored the need for government incentives to help builders increase supply. All told, it was a compelling and moderately assuring presentation. As people on this channel will know, I'm more than a little skeptical about bullshit. I continue to worry that people like the economists that present at major banks are overly incentivized to sugarcoat circumstances in order to keep the money flowing. Let's just see how the next few months play out, shall we?